Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to share with you a little more of my prison days with you. And some of what I'm going to share may be a little graphic, maybe a little gross. So just FYI, viewer discretion, all that good stuff. But it's despite if it's, nasty or whatever the story, they're true stories. And so it's an important part of my journey, in this business and overages and surplus funds. So what I wanted to share with you is when I was working at the prison, there were certain moments that made me question whether or not I was on the right path in life. Because maybe like many of you, I grew up being taught that what was important was to go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a degree, and then find a career. Work in that career and then retire in, 30 years or whatever. So that was my path. That was the path I was on. I was in the National Guard. I went to school, I got a degree, and I was working at the prison. And my plan was to retire from both the state and from the National Guard and have 2 retirement pensions. That was my plan. But then as I started out on that path, especially at the prison, I asked myself this question, and this question is very important, and we should all ask this question on a pretty regular basis. And the question is what I'm doing going to take me where I want to go? And I would ask myself this question, and I remember it very vividly. There was one time where I actually did the math and, figured out what I would get at retirement, if I stuck around for X amount of years, and if I, reached a certain level within the Department of Corrections, what would my retirement be? And when I looked at the numbers, it was very clear that the path I was on was most certainly not going to get me where I wanted to go, financially speaking. And also it was going to take 30 years of my life. And so at that point in time, it was very simple. I had to make a decision, right? I had to make a decision to find a different path. And that's what I started to do. And there were moments while I was working at the prison that kind of cemented in this idea that what I had been taught and what I was doing was not going to bring me what I wanted in life. There were certain instances where I would ask myself, is this really what I want to look forward to for the next 30 years? And specifically, like certain instances, like, for example, I remember this one inmate. I still remember his name. He cut his wrists open so that he could go to the hospital and basically get a vacation from the prison, right? So he cut his wrists, and me, being the low man on the totem pole, I got to mop up his blood and clean the floor where he had spilled his blood all over from slitting his wrists inside of his cell. And as I mopped up his blood, I was like, is this what I want to be doing for the next 30 years? I remember another inmate. I remember this guy's name. In some facilities, you do what are called welfare checks. Basically, you walk by each cell and make sure the inmates are still alive. And just, they're not harming themselves. Okay. Very common in mental health units. So I was working in a mental health unit, and I walked by a cell, and this guy was just known for this, but I peek in there, and he's drinking out of his toilet. And then I look on the walls, and I can see that his feces have been smeared all over the walls. And this building wasn't my my permanent post, so lucky for me, I never had to clean out his cell. But every week, we had to call SWAT in, and they would hose it down this guy's cell because he would just take his shit and just smear it all over the place. And he'd drink out of his water, and he just wasn't there. And I was like, do I want to continue to see these things, for the next 30 years? There are things where sometimes you have to do strip searches. A strip search is basically the inmate has to strip down and make sure they're not hiding any contraband in certain orifices. So you can use your imagination on that, see what that's like. Not a fun part of the job, but it's part of the job. One other quick story, there was another guy, I can't remember his name, he's passed away. He actually passed away in the prison from an accident, but this guy would also self-mutilate. He would bite in his arms and take chunks of flesh out of his arms so that he could go to the emergency room. And then he took it a step further one day, and he decided, I wasn't there when it happened, but he decided to cut his scrotum open and just, see what he could stuff in there. True story. And I wasn't there when it happened, but I was working there when he had to get his injury cleaned out by the nurse. And, I had to watch as she would stuff gauze in this guy's scrotum. And I had to be there to monitor just so that he wouldn't, so he wouldn't hurt the nurse. And I was just like, damn, is this really what I want to be doing for the next 30 years? And then when I found out that if I did stick around, it wasn't going to lead me where I wanted to go, at that point in time, it was just like, I need to find something else. And so what's the point of this video? The point of this video is ask yourself that question. Is what you're doing today or doing on a daily basis, is it giving you what you want in life? Is it going to take you where you want to go in life? And it doesn't have to be just financially. Is what you're doing going to take you where you want to go physically with your body? Is what you're doing going to take you closer to where you want to go as far as the relationships with your significant other or your children or your grandchildren? Is what you're doing now going to take you where you want to go in your retirement years or financially? Do you feel purpose behind the work that you're doing? Do you feel like that you are accomplishing what you were put on this earth to do? And if the answer is no, then what you need to do is find a different path. I'm not here to tell you what that path is. Ultimately, you have to figure that out for yourself. All I can do is just share that my path changed from being an employee at the prison to becoming a business owner and doing the business of recovering overages for people. That was my path. Other people may be on that path. Maybe you start on one path and you transition to another path. Maybe you have multiple paths that you have in your life. But you just have to ask yourself, is the path you're on going to get you where you want to go? And if the answer is no, then look for another path. Now, I understand that's easier said than done, right? It is easier said than done, but what's the alternative? If the answer is no to that question I presented and that you ask yourself, but you don't do anything to change that reality, to change the path that you're on so that you can get on a path that's going to take you where you want to go, but you just ignore it and don't do anything, where's that going to lead you? Where's that going to take you 5, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? At the end of your life, are you going to look back and be like, yeah, I stuck with it? And are you going to be okay with your decision, even though you knew deep down that what you were doing wasn't going to get you what you wanted, but you choose not to do anything about it, how are you going to feel about that at the end of your life? It's just something to think about. At the end of the day, all of us, we can only control what we can control, right? There are outside forces that act upon us and that we can't change. We can't change where we were born, the family we were given, the circumstances or the trials that we have in our lives. We don't get to choose those things, right? We don't get to choose where we're born. We don't get to choose, if we come from a broken or a wealthy or a poor family. We don't get to choose those things. But we do get to choose what we do on a daily basis. And so at the end of the day, ask yourself, is what you're doing going to give you what you want in life? If the answer is no, find a way. Find a way and find a different path so that you can get what you want out of life. Now, if the answer is yes, God bless you, man. Then I wasted 11 minutes of your time. You don't need to watch this. You're set. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what's going to give you what you want. But if the answer is no, find a new path. That's all I got for you. Thanks, guys.